Tons of money pouring in. In the end, the Oregon DEQ moved forward and will issue what's called its proposed rules next week. There will be public hearings on the rules in mid-October. Then they're going to take effect in December. Now, back to California's unique role in setting emission rules. Why, you ask, can't states set their own rules? Have you heard of states' rights? Well, it's because it's forbidden under federal law. California is the only state in the country that can set its own limits on car emissions. The other states have to either follow federal rules, which are not as tough, or follow California's lead. And I think California's special treatment, well, that's definitely worth asking, how did we get here? For the answer to that question, we have to get in the Wayback Machine and go back to the 1940s. The first recognized occurrence of smog was in Los Angeles in 1943. Look at that. People's eyes and lungs burned, and it was initially called a gas attack, blamed on a nearby plant that created a chemical used in synthetic rubber. But even after the plant shut down, the smog persisted. In 1947, the Los Angeles County Air Pollution Control District was formed, regulating power plants and oil refineries, and yet again, the smog was still there. It wasn't until the early 1950s that a Dutch bioorganic chemistry professor from Caltech, Dr. Arie Haagen-Smit, discovered the culprit for smog was automobile exhaust produced by internal combustion engines. So, the state of California began taking action. It created air quality standards. In 1966, California established the first tailpipe emission standards in the country. And that leads us to a California governor you may have heard of, Ronald Reagan. In 1967, he approved the Mulford-Carrell Air Resources Act to create the State Air Resources Board, meant to address air pollution in the Golden State. In that same year, Congress enacted the Federal Air Quality Act, and it was within that piece of legislation that California was first given the ability to set its own air quality rules. And then in 1970, the Federal Clean Air Act expanded on the Air Quality Act, and this time officially gave California the authority to set its own separate, more stringent vehicle emission regulations to address what was called at the time the extraordinary circumstances of population, climate, and topography that generated the worst air in the nation. To this day, California is the only state that can apply for a Clean Air Act waiver to set stricter limits than the federal government. Other states like Oregon and Washington can choose to just follow the feds or to get behind California. If the states choose to follow California, they have to adopt identical regulations. No switching it up, no cherry picking what you like. And again, that's all because of the Federal Clean Air Act of 1970. So, it's fair to say, California wields tremendous environmental and economic power, as they're the only ones who can say, hey, you don't like what the feds are doing when it comes to vehicle emissions? You want to take it a step further? You have to follow our rules. And you can imagine that issue has ruffled some feathers along the way. One of those Clean Air Act waivers was rescinded by President George W. Bush and then restored by President Obama in 2013. But then President Trump rescinded it again in 2019, and then back in March of this year, the Biden administration restored it again, allowing the state to once again set its own emission standards. And a quick side note here, by the way, you ever been infuriated by that check engine light in your car? Well, you can blame the California Air Resources Board. They claim ownership of setting the standard for onboard diagnostic systems like that, beginning with 1988 model year cars. So yeah, that is how we got here. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think about all this? Are you a fan of electric cars, or maybe even one of those fancy hydrogen cars one of these days? Are you hopeful the emission rules will help fight global warming? Send me an email, will you? Our address is thestory@kgw.com, or